Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's Irish Food Trade Connect Conversations. I'm delighted to welcome today Gordon Lucey, who is the founder and owner of Nine White Deer, gluten-free distillery and brewery in Ballyvourney in County Cork. Welcome, Gordon.
Margaret, good afternoon. Yeah, thanks so much for having us. Yeah, great to chat to yourself. I know you're originally only over the road from us, like
Oh, I
so.
am, yeah, and I went to school in Ballyvourney, so I have a soft spot for it now in my 40s. I don't know if I did now when I was in my teenage years,
Yeah,
but I went to school in Coláiste. Yeah, I did. Yeah, yeah. So, um, now you'll probably put me to shame with my Irish now because it's long gone. But anyway, we'll don't be too hard on me. So thanks so much for coming on, and it's a while since I've seen you. I think we met at the year before last at the Be Innovator campus, and I was always very kind of interested in the story because it's from home and it's a lovely product. So tell me, how did the business start, Gordon, and a bit about yourself?
okay. So yeah, it's oh, I was at sea as an engineer for about 15 years, and like when you're on the ship, you're excited to see new places, and we'd get up the road. You do a bit of work, and you could be in port for a week or two. You go exploring, and what the local food, what the local beers, and my eyes just opened up. It says like there's so much different choice. And Ireland was just like this was 90s. We were all kind of going out and seeing what other foods and other countries had, and there was something huge missing at home. So the only way to kind of replicate that was either import, which was challenging and expensive, or start making your own. And yeah, I just got a love for making the beer was almost as much fun as drinking it, and experimenting and getting in your raw ingredients. So I did your kits. You buy a beer kit. I did that a couple of times, and then I suppose the engineer and me just made a semi-automated stainless steel brew plant that could do 100 liters at a time, and that was too big actually. About
You're
half that
saying that
size would have been.
now like it's the most normal thing that anyone would just go out and do. But maybe
Yeah,
to an
but I,
engineer it isn't. Maybe to an engineer it actually could be normal. Is that right?
but you get like a lot of people that start something what they do, they're really passionate about it, and you just want to sponge up all the information you can and get so involved in it that the learning curve is hugely steep, but you embrace it and love it. And that was for me with brewing, reading all I could. And then I suppose eventually when we started the brewery, I went away and got qualified then, just for process stuff really. And then a couple of years later, went on and did food management manufacturing in UCC. But yeah, so the only way to start growing it, I used to do a bit, others taste it then, so you had friends and do a party or whatever, and over the years, so that was back in 2099, actually, 2000, something like that, started brewing first. And then Don, who has the mills in Ballyvourney, two of us got together in about 2012 and see, look, is there a business in this? What does it involve? What's the capital that be involved? That was an eye-watering thing. We knew it couldn't be just a pots and pans thing. It had to be a volume game in order to be sustainable, unless it's just going to be a lifestyle business. We wanted more than that. So we went off. We got took me about a year to do the business plan. It was quite in depth, but once we had that, going to agencies, going to banks, it was quite easy to get finance and to get supports then because they could see the depth and the level of planning that we had put into it and a good understanding of what it was, and that it wasn't just some unicorns and fairy cakes written down that was unrealistic. Um, and then I project managed the putting together of the brewery, so that saved us a fortune, to be honest. We probably put it together for about maybe 400 or 500 grand. If we were to do it without me project managing it, we wouldn't have been out the door for 1 million quid. So it really helped us get a good start. And as well, we knew the equipment. We were able to put in packaging. right at the start. And a lot of companies didn't do that or couldn't do that. They just ran short of funding. So from the very start, we had contract packaging lined up, even when we just had one beer going to the market. So we had a good cash flow right at the start. And again, Don was pretty experienced in the trade, been in the hospitality for a long time, a lot of contacts. So we got a good front start exposure, getting beers out there in the pub, and then we worked in the small pack, getting into Musgrave Group. But yeah, I suppose we'd very differing skills, and I think that's really important in business, that you don't try and replicate yourself, or that you're hiring people the same as you, because you're not going to get anywhere. Um,
True.
you
Like, I mean, to say, like, your skill set is very technical, and like, there's so many people I see buy pieces of machinery and don't understand what they do and how they do it. And then it starts and it's meant to be a certain amount, and the scope creep comes in. And as you say, if something isn't project managed very tightly, it can go to that €1,000,000. And where do you get it? So that's where probably cash flow. And was that all funded, Gordon? Was it? Did you get funding for all of it, or did you back a lot of it
about
yourselves?
half. Yeah, we got funding for about half it. We had to come up with the rest ourselves. And as well as that, I suppose, like for the first, so we formed the company in 2012, December 2012, and we were brewing for 2014, end of the middle of June 2014. And like even for that period, we'd no money coming in, obviously, um, and only for my good wife Sinead being in a good job, she funded me for that period and ran the house and stuff like that. And it couldn't have been done only for supports like that as well. And that's often forgotten about when you're planning a project, that people leave out their own wage and how they're going to survive for it. But obviously, if you're going down the pan, you're not going to be able to manage the project, and you're no good to anyone, you know.
And that's the sign of a strong relationship, or whether it be business or your own marriage or relationship or whatever, because it is. And I was only talking to someone earlier about, when this is your baby and this is how you're going to earn your living, you have to push it and you have to determine. And there will be days that you kind of go, God, will I ever see a return on this? And eventually it does come, but it takes persistence, doesn't it? It takes serious
It does.
persistence.
It does. And it builds slowly. Like, you're not walking into a light switch doesn't go off and suddenly you've, I don't know, 30 grand income or something. Back then, it just takes time to build that up. Um, and then like if we just fast forward, I know we can go back again, but we came into COVID and it put us under extreme pressure. And Don had pressure as well in his two businesses. So he's the Mills Inn, he's Kerry Way, trying to manage them, and he stepped away from the business. And we were in peril at that stage. Sinead came in then, so she gave up her role, and uh, became finance director. And like she was working, in case with PCH International in Cork, and her weekly budget was in tens of millions kind of stuff. So coming down and dealing with us,
She's a good woman to bring into the business, isn't she?
yeah, but it gives. There's no option of failure. Just it has to work. It has to keep going. And in COVID, I remember like, and Sinead would tell you, I think June was our decision month, or July, whatever it was, in probably 2020, and we're going, are we opening? Are we going to close it? Because in business, like the last thing we want to do was go into a hole that we couldn't get out of, that it was going to cost us, or to start impacting house, or because you're the guarantor, like. So yeah, we turned it around, but we can come back to that story later. It's really good, how we did manage to turn around. Um,
They're hard
but yeah,
decisions, isn't
all in.
it? It's a like, how did you feel in that month to say it was a decision month? Because you'd put an
Do
awful
you
lot into
know?
it before that.
Yeah, but you have to stop your decisions from the heart. Like, it has to be from the head. It has to be the commercials of the whole thing. And you'll see that often, even when businesses fail. Like, they'll push along, and you know it's the heart is making those decisions, and that's not necessarily correct all the time. That, you know, it helps to have maybe someone external with a good finance background. Will you come in and just have a look at this? And are we crazy what we're doing, or can you give us a steer in it? So, yeah,
And it is, and that's quite a lot of my own work is that. And sometimes you feel like you're the bearer of bad news, that a lot of people might like what you say, but when
yeah.
the numbers
At
tell a
the time,
story. Yeah, yeah, the numbers tell a story. Tell us, and we will come back to the turnaround, but I'm interested to know, how did you come across the name for the business, Nine White Deer? What does it mean?
yeah, we couldn't see it, that had it. So, like, we were thinking, we know we didn't want to be the Ballyvorney Brewery, or Muskery Gaeltacht or something like that, because it needs to travel, and you can somewhat put yourself into a pigeonhole if you're just that area, and there's some rivalry or something. There's hidden things that people have in the back of their head. They can't quite say why they made that decision, or they won't bother with that. And so we ran a competition, and funds were short at this stage when we were coming to this now. So what are we going to call it? So I came across a website online where you can run a competition. I think we put up 500 quid or something, and explain what you want to do, where you are, give as much detail as you can, and what you're looking for. So we were looking for a name in the business. And instead of going to a brand house for that 500 quid, you might get an afternoon or something. This was in front of people, like about 300 people, for about 2 weeks. And I think we had about 800 different varieties came back, and 9 White Deer came back. It came back a couple of times. And the first person we saw and said, why did we not think of that? Like, we were too close to the wood, and we couldn't see the wood for the trees. And sure, it was just brilliant. And the story behind that is, so St. Governor was up in the west with her father. He was not the best character, and she broke away from him, and then had a premonition that when she sees the 9 White Deer together in the one field, that's where your home is. That's where you set up your abbey. And you'll hear as she came down, there's place names after her, Kilgovernor, etc. Came to Clondrad. I think she made 8 there, or 7, onto Ballyvorney, came across the 9 White Deer, and that's it. And she's buried up in the graveyard. So St. Yeah, I'm sure you know yourself, there's a lot of people, girls with that name.
Downright, yeah, there is, but I never knew the story. I never knew that. And as many times as I've been up around the cemetery and everything, and for anyone that doesn't know, Saint Gobnet is the saint of Ballyvorney. So
Yeah,
it's a real, as you say, that brand name can travel globally, but there's a hidden meaning to the people who live in the
yeah,
area, which is
yeah.
absolutely fabulous. Like, I just think that's amazing that
And like,
brand can. Yeah.
even if you travel out the road, now we lucky enough to get a bypass there last year, and just as you go up into the bounds, as we call it, so the border between Cork and Kerry, as you're traveling up, and where they cut into the rock, there's a big flat face of that rock. And a number of years ago, there was an artist commissioned, and she cut 9 deer, huge, like, into the side of the rock, something like you see on some of the UK sites where it'll be dug out and this chalk put into it, so it can be seen from far away. Not quite that scale, um, but yeah, it's fantastic, and it's timeless.
It's really timeless. And I didn't know that, and I've travelled that road quite a bit. Oh my God, yeah. We wouldn't cross the bounds if the weather was bad. You wouldn't, you
No,
wouldn't, you
no,
wouldn't, you
that's still the
wouldn't.
case. Like.
And so the where the brewery is then, tell us a little bit about where the brewery is and how it's set up, how many people you're working with, and take us back to how you're still in business today and how it's going.
Yeah. So it fluctuates kind of between 7 and 9 people, between summer and winter. Obviously, it's quite seasonal. Paddy's Day at the start of the season for us. You're heavily brewing in February. And then around this time of year, it slows a little bit, and people move. So coming back from summer homes, and holiday season calms down, people back into cities and back into their winter routine. So we'd follow them, and actually how we brew and where we sell to changes a bit there seasonally. We're in the middle of the village, and it's really good. It's so social. We were looking at another site before, um, but yeah, this came up, and it's nice to be in the community. But you're going across the road for shop for lunch, and you're meeting people and meeting your friends, um, and yeah, I think that's an important factor rather than just coming into a factory and the doors closed behind you and you don't see anything again till 5 o'clock or whatever. Um, Business is good. Yeah, nice, profitable this year, same as last year. The summer's been really good. May was fantastic. June was good, and July was actually our um, record month ever. We had a superb, um, and like that's even maintaining our price structure. We haven't raised prices since 2022. Now that comes at a cost, but the cost was doing more work. Our margin we've managed to maintain our margin the same. We're passing that all the way back down to the line to consumer. And I think that's crucial. Like energy, we all know energy prices peaked and they calmed down. They should have calmed down a bit more. And there's three in the last 2 weeks have announced price increasing again. And so we've done a lot of innovation to maintain our energy costs, and we've passed that on really. And like when you see other brands and they're shooting for the stars with pricing, and there's really no need for it. It's tough on consumers. Like the price of, should we all know, housing is a major thing for us, even renting. There's not a whole pile left in the pocket at the end of the month, even though we're supposed to be so rich as a country. So we feel that's really important, to just have a bit of grounding on where we are. Leave others do what they want, make their own decisions. We make ours, and I suppose we've the savvy to understand our commercials enough that we can still make the same margin of profit, and there's no one coming out with wheelbarrows of money. But where everyone's happy, and good solid living wage, and anything we make always goes back into the business to help us all. Yeah, so but you can't find a brewer. You're not going to pick one of them up across the road. We imported our last brewer, Guido, from Germany. He was visiting Cork for 12 or 14 years. He stayed over in Gugon Barra Hotel quite a lot, and we'd be palling with Neil out there as well, explaining what he did. And they tried to move previously, but obviously doing that from remote and still working in Germany is difficult. So he got on to us, and we weren't hiring then, but we would be in a few months. And yeah, we did our interviews, did our due diligence, and it's turned into obviously a fantastic brewer. He's 27 years of brewing history behind him. And moved into Cooley, so the next village up. Embraced it, and just immersed himself and the wife in the village. Yeah, doing things like that, it's a nice asset to bring to the place, and you know.
It's like you've said a couple of things there now that really come to the core of your business, because you are a full believer, and you don't just talk the talk, you walk the walk with sustainability. And even with what you're saying there about not increasing prices since 2022, there isn't many companies haven't. So fair play for that. And that you're giving it back into the pocket of the consumer, because that pocket is still very tight no matter what anyone says. It's very, very tight. So because your business is so commercially astute, and you watch your cost control within, like say, looking at the electricity and looking at different initiatives in the business to manage that commercially, and then by bringing in, you must have been watching that brewer for a long time to say he was visiting for 10 to 12 years, and that's how relationships develop, and for him to move over for that role. So it sounds like you're very business savvy as regards
Yeah,
managing the cost
I
structure
think
for the
so.
spend.
Yeah, like a number of years ago. Well, things changed a lot when I came from off the brewery floor and into the office. And none of us start, you don't start your brewing business or cake making business or bakery or bread or whatever you do. You don't usually start that to be in an office. To start, you envisage yourself hands on. Inevitably, as it grows, that changes and perspective changes with it. So when that happened, um, I didn't have a lot of the tool set to be able to do that properly. And I knew that, and it was a weakness, and I was aware of it. So I actioned to change it and did a food manufacturing management course with UCC over a 12-month period. Quite intense, obviously running things here as well. It changed the way we looked at everything. We did a complete business shake-up then. And a lot of the stuff, even stuff that, oh, sure, look, put it in here to be great for exposure, and we ended all that nonsense. Like, if you can't see a return on what you're doing, then don't do it. Um, just a simple rule like that. There are very, very few exceptions to that, that we would do it because of relationship building or whatever. Um, and yeah, it's just been intensely aware of your day to day costs. Like in COVID, you'd have monthly KPIs, you'd have weekly KPIs. In COVID, in that month of June and July, like we were down at daily snapshots of where we were, managing things that closely and that tight. And I know, speaking with other consultants, that much bigger businesses than ours weren't paying that level of detail attention to what they were doing. Um, but again, I suppose we row our own boat, and we manage things ourselves. Um, and yeah, it's a learning, isn't it? We're 11 years at it now. We understand it very well. We hope so anyway. Um, and even the style of that we do things, or we develop a beer. It'd be easy to develop all beers that I like, but you might be able to sell them. So you have to develop stuff that you're going to be selling, and that's the way we looked at it from the start, right? What are the largest selling beers? Who's drinking the beer? What's the occasion? How much are they spending? How regular? How many drinks? All that detail. So you're building your personas, getting an understanding of them, and say, right, how do we fit into this? And so our Colch light lager, we were the first to do Colch in Ireland. I hadn't heard of it. Actually, that's another good story. Um,
What
so
is
when I
that
was
now?
built, so the Colch light lager, it's a hybrid really. Sometimes depending on what point in history you're talking about, it was an ale, it was a lager. It's in between. It's a hybrid beer. Um, and lager meaning really that it takes longer to produce. So kind of 6 to 8 weeks would be a traditional German lager. In Ireland, that could be 10 days. And an ale usually, well, for us, an ale is 3 to 4 weeks. So we're producing lager in 3 to 4 weeks that's clean tasting, but doesn't require the length of time that a traditional lager would, because that's tank space you're taking up, and you could be halving your efficiency of the plant if you're leaving it for 8 weeks. So I was building the equipment, and uh, there was a person that was staying in the mills, or they were touring Ireland. They stayed in the mills for a period, and again with German music, sorry, Irish music, in played in Germany, and uh, there was a local dancer musician, Timmy the Brit, because he spent time in London. So
I think I heard him.
you
That's
would. It's fantastic.
my
So
dad, I think, used to talk about him. God rest him. Timmy the
yep.
Brit. Is he? He's probably an old man now at this stage. Is
Oh,
he? He
Timmy
must.
Timmy died. Oh, it
He
must have
did.
been
Yeah, I was thinking he must be. Oh
six.
my God, that
Must be
name.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
He was the only person I know of that was waked in the mills. That's how of a
All
good
right.
character he was, in proper style. Like it was. He would have loved it. In fairness, so they were doing music over in Germany and Munich. Met up with some of the guys, and this one person was asked, would he like to come on tour in Ireland with them and come over as part of it? So absolutely, fell in love with the place, drinking the mills and chatting, and asked you about what we do. Or, do you know, we're saying plants making beer and all that. And he said, I might be able to advise or help you on that. Okay. It turns out he was the operations manager at Augustinier Brewery. Enormous, just enormous. There was 18 brewmasters working under him. He was one of them. He'd gone up through the ranks. He's recently retired. And we became really good pals. He was over this year. They come over about every 2 years. And just what a mine of information. And look, I see in your Irish market, he said a college lager might actually suit you. It's a light beer, relatively easy to make. So we sat down and did out some recipes and ingredients and such. And that's now our largest selling by quite a long way. So Stagpone would be our next bottled beer. Like the college we'd probably do, I don't know, about 9 to 11,000 cases a year of it. And it'd be half that for our next beer, like for Stagpone. And then you've draft as well on top of that. Um, and it's understanding really. So the essence of that is understanding what people want, rather than trying to force them, trying to persuade people to drink what we'd like them to drink. Is that we manufacture what we think they would like and steer them in the right direction, trying to, you know, off your major brands or whatever, and try something local that's less ingredients, less messing about with it, better quality. Um, yeah.
That is, it often comes up here, Gordon, people that say that they met a certain person that knew someone, or, because often, and we talked about it, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago on here with someone, is that there is a touch of luck too in business. Do you know? You meeting him and all of a sudden, look who he is, and he's able to help you create something that's your bestseller today. Like, that's unbelievable the way that happens, isn't it?
Mm,
So, as hard as
yeah.
you work too, there's a stroke of luck in business. And sometimes we forget that someone could be looking down on us to help us, which is
Yeah.
brilliant.
There's opportunity in
Unbelievable.
everywhere, really, just to poke it out and to find it, and when you get something like that, it's to take it and use it. Um, and yeah, it's people, isn't it?
It's unbelievable, people. And, people genuinely want to help, especially when they were very interested in what you were doing, came from it himself. And so that's really, really, an asset. And as long as well as a friendship, an asset in your business, to be
Yeah,
honest, that
yeah,
advice. You're very much a sustainable business and have developed technologies in the business as well. Like, so you're highly innovative. Tell us a little bit about that.
yeah. I suppose it came from the engineering side. So, like engineering, we're doing a lot with energy in different forms. You know, from at sea, from propulsion to generating electricity to and using the energy in a fuel to do that. And looking, you're all the time looking at wasted energy and saying, how can we reduce that? How can we do it better and how can we fix it? And when you're first starting a business, it's not the largest concern. The biggest thing to get up and running. We use what we have. Don't have a whole pile of cash. So we would have repurposed some tanks at the time. And it served a purpose and, it did as well for 10 years or whatever. But then the Ukraine invasion, really put focus on how we're using energy, and what we can do. And I think, to be fair, the EU and hence our government um, realized that they needed to support this if they want to change Europeans' energy usage, independence as much as we can, and to be sustainable. It's coming down on branding eventually. Well, next year actually, where your suppliers are going to be asking for your sustainability credentials. We're pretty well ahead of the curve in that, and we're kind of on the way to B Corp. That's what we're looking for. That's our next goal. But where we are now is um, we put in solar PV as much as we could fit on the roof, which is about 30 kilowatts. And over the year, that's about 40% of our electricity needs, or 39% of it. Um, we also put in nitrogen generation. So your CO2, bottled gas, CO2 and nitrogen, industrial gases, which you're buying, it's not necessarily the cleanest environmental portfolio that they would have. Like a lot of it is a byproduct from fertilizer, from petrochemical industries. And we just wanted to back away from that for ourselves. Like we see ourselves as in the country, understanding our environment and want to have the smallest impact we can on our environment. And it just didn't sit with us. So I suppose it's one thing getting in the equipment, but managing it and levering it off other equipment and its use really comes into the fore. So with excess solar, say if we can't use all the solar, it's too big to store in batteries. It's the power levels are just too much. Like. So you can store it in other ways. You can store it thermally. So you can store hot water, or you can store cold water, or you can create something with that energy. So we put in a nitrogen generator. So we're capturing nitrogen from the air. Air is 78% nitrogen, but we needed all the oxygen out. And when I say all the oxygen, we're down to parts per billion. So if you're selling a beer or a packaged beer and it ends up with 100 parts per billion or something, or 120 parts per billion, it's going to age pretty quickly and you're not going to get your 8, 9 months, 12 months stability in it. That technology used to be really only for much bigger players. But in the last number of years, it's come down to our level. So we put that in, we put extra tanks, and now we've smart solutions and how we use that. So, and it's just programming really. It's not that difficult, and if it wasn't your forte, it's not too bad to get someone in to do it. Excuse me. So the decision making process goes like it. Okay, what is tomorrow going to be like solar wise? That data is free to get out there in the internet. Um, and if it's not going to be great, okay, I'll turn on the nitrogen generator when the cheap rate electricity comes in tonight. I'll run it for that period, and now we're set up for the following day or the day after, depending. Um, and you're doing similar decision makings, or the system is, along with hot water and chilled water. So either running the glycol when it's cheaper to run, storing that energy as a bank, and then tapping off it in the day when electricity is expensive to buy. Um, so it's all, I suppose, it's a combination of all that things put together, that enable us to keep our costs the same, in reduce a bit, in fact, and pass that saving on and been better for the environment at the same time. Like there was a time where sustainability, it was nearly a burden on a business, but it's not now. It's you're levering to a competitive advantage really with it, and the supports out there from Europe are really good for it. Um, it baffles me as to why more people aren't taking up on it. You know.
Well, I suppose, when you explained it there and you explain it in quite simple terms from someone that's n not an engineer, not a technologist, but I got what you were saying. And like when you talk about, storing solar because there's too much of it, and forecasting it to see what it's going to be like that use, I haven't heard it to that detail now. And that is a cost saving. That's serious monitoring of using the natural resource. So, you know, I suppose it's the way your brain thinks as well. And it's like what you said before about, if it doesn't return an investment, don't do it. And anyone that's kind of a sales and marketing brain, you could go off into the ether doing, and sometimes I have to be pulled back. Am I going to, is this going to reap, money, but that is a very technical thing after explaining there. Um, I think a lot more businesses need to know that, or should know that, and don't, and use sustainability to their advantage rather than saying it's just we have to do it, because it can save costs in different ways. And I see it a lot in businesses where waste mightn't be recorded as such, so it's just monitoring that. And another thing that you said way back in the conversation about during the COVID, when you were measuring KPIs by the day. Now, you're a brewery. We used to do that in produce, because produce is like, it's gone. Like, you turn around and it's gone off. Like, so that level of detail is how you're able to keep your prices the same since 2022. Congratulations on that.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah,
serious
thanks.
work. Serious work.
But like if I really think if people would target, like in bigger corporations now, getting to deal direct with the CFO or chief financial officer or whatever, um, rather than just an operations perspective and saying, look, how would you like to uh, increase your net margin by 20% or something? Like, that's pretty hard to do. Traditionally, you have three ways of doing that: or increasing your sales volume, increasing your price, or cutting your costs. Taxation we can't do anything about. So if you can persuade the CFO that by doing these actions, by putting in solar, whatever, here's your 3-year return on investment, they will then start commanding that operations, lads, this is what ye are going to be doing. I don't know, it might be a different angle of getting at it for people.
I
But the
totally
information is there.
agree with you. And I go into so many businesses and their operations don't speak to their finance. And like, if finance people aren't involved in driving, in managing cost, they're the purse holders. I always call them the purse holders, you know. You can spend as much, but if you don't watch that purse. So I totally agree. And I hope everyone that's listening here could please allow their financial people, or get their financial people involved in the business, because those two particles working together, definitely there's money. There's money there, you know. I've another, just one more question for you. If you wanted, is there anybody that you would love to bring into the brewery in the morning to show them around? Anyone that inspires you or you'd love to sell to?
I've always kind of admired Garrett Oliver. He's Brooklyn Brewing over in the States. Um, he did a lot of things at the start when, uh, like, he really catapulted food and beer pairing, where everything is wine. And you go into a restaurant and it's wine. You get a specific wine menu alongside the food, and you have a sommelier and telling you all about the wine. And beer was like the poor relation. Um, and like, Garrett transformed a lot of that, and the way people think about beer and food together. Like, beer is as old as hills. Like, if you think, okay, 100 years ago, what was beer like? Similar-ish to now, I would imagine. Go back 200 years, 300, 400 years. Now we're getting into changes. We're starting to use, when the hops started coming into it, and we're using other things like bog myrtle and stuff for bittering. But like, beer is 5,000 years old. Imagine what that was like then. And it probably happened in a number of different places at the same time-ish. Mishap fermentations and stuff. Um, I always say that beer is the reason for civilization. So if we didn't have beer, we're still walking around the place, hunter-gatherers. So when we decided that, okay, we can use these grains, and they're grass grains, really, just the same as rice and wheat and barley, though different types of grasses. But rather than picking randomly, we decided to stay set, create agriculture, create common, what we know now as civil communities, civilization. Some people say it's beer, or some people say it's bread, some people say it's beer. I'll always take the beer side of it, though. Like, beer is the reason for civilization, and that's a pretty profound statement.
It's a big statement, Gordon. A very big statement. So fair play to you. Or beer, I'm telling you. But you're right. Like, if you go back and watch, things on the television there that are in the 1800s, they're all. What was I watching lately? I won't say anyway. It was something on the telly, going back to the 1800s, and they were all with the silver things, and they're drinking out of it. I mean, that's like, so it is that old. It's really
Yeah,
old. I think
yeah.
sometimes we forget that. So thanks for bringing us all the way back there. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. You are such a mine of information. And I suppose I have such admiration for a business that are so cost focused with sustainability, doing the right thing for the environment and the community. So thanks for taking the time to talk to me today.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure, Margaret. Thank you.